Hey friends, welcome to day 9 of our Advent Stitch Along. Today we are going to be working on our city, and it is going to be a pretty easy stitching day, but there are a little bit of complications to it. We're going to be using color 3828, 3862, and 3864, and today you do want to make sure you're using your size 5 needle. Do not use your size 22 needle. Okay, so we're going to be using a satin stitch on all of these homes, and as you might have noticed on your stitch guide, I have it labeled by the color, so the letter matches the color it needs to be. If you printed this out in color, or if you are looking at the digital version, then you can see it visually a little more more easily than if you printed this in black and white. But I also have an order in which I want you to stitch these things. So I have this on the digital guide, but I wrote it out here for myself. You can see where I have the order in which I want to stitch. I have 1 here, 2 here, 3, 4, 5, and then jump to 6, and so forth. You want to stitch in this order because you want to always be coming from the top of the city down. And so in order to do that, you need to make sure you're finishing the pieces, the homes that are more in the front technically, and then you'll work your way up into the city that's kind of more in the background, if that makes sense. I would suggest, if you have your pattern and you can print a new one, or you don't mind writing on it, to write out the numbers here. And as you notice, I even color coordinated it. Surprisingly, I did not match the brown color with the brown pen. I thought afterwards, I'm like, well, that was silly. But this might be a really helpful guide for you as you stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and get my 3828, because that's our first house right here, is a 3828, on my size 5 needle and show you what I'm going to do. All right, so I've got my needle ready, and we're going to start on this first house. And as I mentioned, we are doing a satin stitch, or at least I hope I mentioned we're doing a satin stitch. But for this very first stitch, we're going to do just like we did on that little heads over here, and we're going to make just a random little stitch somewhere in the middle of the home. That way we can just prevent our knot from getting in the way later. And we're going to do this every time we start a new color. But as I'm going to show you, you will hopefully not have to start a new color more than once. All right, so I made my random little back stitch there, and I'm going to actually split. Here we started all the way on the right side of the face and we moved to the left. Here I'm going to start in the middle. And come down. And now if you're worried that you're not going to actually end up in the middle, you can kind of hold your floss straight down so that you can kind of see where you should be going, if that would help you. And if it's not straight, you can always pull it out and try it again. Okay, now I'm going to go to the left of that. You can go left or right, it doesn't really matter. And you want to make sure you're getting as close to that grass as possible, if not even going a little bit into the stitch down there in the grass. I'm going to turn it towards me a little bit so I can make sure I'm going far enough down. And you do want to make sure you're making these stitches close enough together that you're not going to accidentally leave a gap where you can see the fabric underneath. Okay, again, use your finger, use the flat side of your needle, kind of straighten that out if you need to. Now I'm going to go to the right. And since all these buildings are straight, I know we mentioned on these other straight or satin stitches that we needed to tuck them. We will not need to tuck them here, because it's, for the most part, the same size as the top as it is the bottom. You can tuck if you realize you're getting really crooked for some reason and you're trying to straighten out your needle. But this is such a small area of satin stitch that really you could just pull out your floss if you feel like you went too crooked. And I think I've just about one more stitch, maybe two, we'll see. Okay, I think one is good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove my needle, but I'm not gonna tie this off. Let me zoom out just a little bit. I'm going to, I want you to be able to see how I did this last time. I'm going to pull my floss kind of up from the back and lay it across my piece. And I'm gonna get the next color ready and just start stitching that next color. Okay, I have 3862 on my needle, and I'm now going to stitch number 2, which is right here. I'm going to do that same thing since this is the first time I'm stitching with this color. I'm going to make a little back stitch in the middle. And then I'm going to start on my satin stitch. So I'll just split the little house right in the middle, or as close to the middle as you can get. And then go straight down. Oh, it's a little crooked. Let's see how that looks. It feels a little crooked. I think it'll be fine. All right, so as you notice, this gold color, 3828, it's still attached. I just moved it out of the way so it's not gonna be getting tangled in my floss. I found this to be the easiest way to stitch this. And so when I'm done with the brown, I'll kind of move it aside. And then when I'm done with that, as I said, move aside, then I'll grab the next color and put that one through. And then as I'm just going through, following the order, I'm just going to keep switching my needle to the correct color. If that stresses you out, it's okay. Just tie off after each home, then you can rethread your needle. It's really not a big deal. I just personally really enjoyed this for time saving purposes and not having to tie off every single time. If you do tie off every single time, I would say make sure you make that little random stitch in the middle of the home each time. That way your knots aren't going to get in the way later. For this situation, since I've already done my little knot in the middle here, when it's time for me to do another brown home, I can just instantly start making the satin stitch. I don't have to make that little random back stitch in the middle of the house. I hope all that makes sense. If it doesn't, I am more than happy to answer any questions you have. I am going to talk to you for a few minutes. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes and do the next color after this so you can just see how I'm doing it. I'm going to zoom in so you can see. I know we've already done a satin stitch, so this isn't anything new to you, but the fact that the floss is just kind of hanging out on the back might feel a little intimidating. And you could just do it for a little bit of time, and then whenever you feel like maybe it's starting to get a little too complicated and too stressful, then you just move it out of the way. Say, see you later, alligator. I don't know why I'm talking to y'all like you're one of my kids. Okay. Satin stitches can sometimes be really intimidating to people. I might as well talk to y'all while you're here. Can be really intimidating to people, and I think it's because it can be hard to make the stitch look perfectly straight and not have like a jagged little starting point at the top of your satin stitch, or not the top always, but the starting point. So what I have kind of learned is that with my needle, you want to make sure that you're always coming right at the line that you're tracing. And even though when you're like right now, let's see if I can zoom a little bit more. Right now, it looks like I'm a little above from that previous stitch, but once I pull this needle up and through and then down, it's going to pull all the floss down and pull the fabric down. So it's going to appear a little lower than you originally stitched it. I hope that makes sense. Just trust the process. So even though, because sometimes you want to sit, like look at one stitch right next to another and you're like, well, it's not exactly right next to one another, but you have to understand that your floss is going to pull your fabric down a little bit, and your floss is even going to get pulled down. Maybe it's not really your fabric, but it's more just your floss. I heal. I heal. I don't know why that came out like a baby voice. I hear my mailman, which is making me feel uncomfortable. I'm not sure why. They cannot hear me talking inside my house. But y'all probably do hear my kids upstairs playing during their quiet time. Okay, almost done here. It might be a little too late at this point, but here's a reminder that YouTube does have a 2x speed. So if you don't really want to be watching me doing this at slow motion or regular motion, you could always speed me up. Okay, I'm gonna do one more right here. And number 3, the third house we're going to stitch, is a 38-28 color again. So I'm not adding that third color yet to my floss that's hanging out here in the back, but I am going to take my needle off of this brown. Let me zoom out so you can see how I'm going to pull this one aside, the brown, and now I'm going to pull my gold back out and rethread it. It would not hurt to periodically look in the back and just make sure you're not accidentally pulling on a color you're not using. For the most part, especially when we're doing this first row, we're not crossing over too much, and so it won't be as too big of a deal. Okay, so we're going to do 3, which is right here. And because I don't have to restart my thread, I don't have to do that back stitch right in the middle. I'm just going to go straight and split it right in the middle. If I can find a spot I like to start at. Go straight down. I always go to the left, I think. I say that now, but maybe always is too strong of a word. I normally go to the left and then I come back and go to the right, but it really doesn't matter. Splitting it halfway just helps you keep it straight, your line straight. It's like your little anchor. Oh, that stitch you might not be able to see, but I definitely made those two, there you go, a little too far apart, which is not a big deal. So what I'm going to do, first make sure this stitch is laying flat. I'm just going to come right in the middle of the two and fill in that spot that I missed. Or if I really wanted to, I could pull that previous stitch out and just redo it. I need to turn it towards me a little bit. It's hard to see when I'm keeping it flat for y'all. There you go. Okay, and as soon as I finish this house, I think I'm going to go ahead and fast forward everything so that this will just go nice and fast for you. Because you don't need to see me do a satin stitch over and over and over again. If there are any tips I have, it would be, you know what? No, just look in the timestamps at the bottom. Sorry that I'm a little, towards the end of the stitch along days, I tend to be a little less rehearsed in my speech. So when we look in the timestamps below, and I will stop when I get to this rounded roof and when I get to this little castle looking building so that I can explain a few tips for you there. Right, one more stitch here. Okay, now I'm going to speed this up. All right, so we're already at our first curved house. I have color 3864 on my needle. Because it's the first time I'm using that color, I'm going to do a random little back stitch in the middle. And then come up at the top and split the house right in the middle. And we're doing the exact same thing we've done on all these other stitches. I just wanted you to be able to watch me do one that has a curve on the top so that you can see what it looks like. All right, so have that first stitch going to the left, and I'm just going to follow that curve going down. This is where tracing is pretty important from the very beginning, because if you do not trace well, you will not be able to follow the lines going down very well. So if you are in the middle of stitching and you think, if I follow where my trace marks are, it's not going to look very good, then feel free to change where you're stitching. If you need to adjust it, adjust it. That is no problem. You do not need to follow your tracing perfectly, especially if following it means it's not going to turn out the way that you would like. Ooh, keep hitting my floss with my finger. Turning this towards me real fast so I can see it a little bit better. Make sure I'm putting my stitch down in the right spot. Okay, so that's the little house. I'm going to take my needle off and I'm going to pull, sorry, I keep hitting my tripod, and pull my thread aside so that I can then work on number 6, which is going to be over here. And it was the same color, so I should not have removed my needle from my floss. So the rest is going to be sped up, and just watch. If you want to watch me do the castle, I will have a timestamp below, and I will stop and slow that down a little bit. Okay, so here we are at the first castle. I have 3862 on my needle, and we're just again doing the same thing that we did earlier. We're still splitting it right in half. This time I'm trying to see if I can get it as close to that house as possible. If you can't, that's okay. Let me move that gold color out of the way. Yeah, look at that. Got it spot on. I'm gonna go to the left. Okay, and so right here, I can tell that I have no more space to go to the left before it moves up to that little top portion. And so I'm just gonna go straight to the top portion. Make sure I'm right on the edge of it so that my floss is close enough to my floss at the bottom. And then just finish going, filling that portion in. This will be the last little bit I show you. I'll finish these two little houses off camera, and then we will come back tomorrow and we are going to have the lightest day ever, which I think feels pretty appropriate for Friday. Making sure I have my disc. No, tomorrow's not Friday. I don't remember what tomorrow is, but it's just nice that we have a really light day. And then it gives you time, if you need to catch up on anything, you can catch up. Did I mention what we're doing? We're doing the stars tomorrow. Tomorrow's the stars. At this point, we only have 2 colors left that we're using in the whole piece, and 2 different types of stitches. 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. 3 types of stitches. All right, that's all for now. Come back tomorrow and we can work on the stars. See you tomorrow, friends.